Back in 1985, the average house went for around $80,000, about $230,000 in today's money. It sounds small now, but for a middle-class family, it was reachable. Folks could buy a home with one steady job, a lawn out front, and a mortgage that didn't hang like a mountain over their heads. A brand-new car in the mid-'80s averaged just under $8,000, roughly $23,000 today. It was the era of boxy sedans, shiny minivans, and the last big station wagons. Families often traded in every few years, rolling home with a proud grin and that unmistakable smell of a new car. Financing made it possible without breaking the bank. The average household income in 1980 was about $21,000 a year, climbing closer to $32,000 by the decade's end. That money stretched farther than you'd think today. One paycheck could cover the mortgage, car payments, groceries, and even leave something aside for vacations or saving bonds. Families counted on steady raises, and most lived within their means. Minimum wage was $3.10 an hour at the start of the decade and $3.80 by the end. Teenagers bagging groceries or flipping burgers could afford gas, movie tickets, and the occasional record. It wasn't glamorous money, but it gave kids independence, and it helped many families fill in the gaps when ends didn't quite meet. Gasoline averaged about $1.20 a gallon in 1980, and by 1986, it dipped closer to 90 cents. That's around $3 to $4 today. You could fill a tank for $10 and drive for a week. Families still worried about oil shocks from the 70s, but by the mid-'80s, road trips felt affordable again. Mortgage interest rates hit punishing double digits, over 12% in the early '80s. Buying a house wasn't just about scraping together a down payment. Those steep rates meant monthly bills that bit deep. Yet folks still lined up at banks, paperwork in hand, determined to secure a place of their own, no matter the cost. Public university tuition averaged about $1,000 to $1,500 a year, barely $4,000 in today's dollars. A summer job could cover it, and student loans weren't yet crushing weights. For the middle class, sending kids to college felt possible, even on modest incomes. Compare that to today, when a year's tuition can swallow a family whole. In 1980, farmland averaged about $737 an acre, roughly $2,500 today. Family farms were still common, but debt and high interest rates pushed many into foreclosure before the decade was through. The land itself held steady value, though. Today, farmland averages more than $5,000 an acre, and in the Midwest, it can be double or triple. The average property tax bill in 1980 came in around $700 a year, equal to about $2,750 today. Families set money aside grudgingly, but it didn't break them. Now, in many suburban counties, taxes climb past $8,000 or even $12,000 a year. Back then, folks joked they truly owned their homes, unlike today, when taxes feel like rent. A week-long family vacation in the 1980s ran about $1,000 total, equal to $3,500 today. Families packed the car for Florida beaches, the Grand Canyon, or Yellowstone, staying in motels and eating roadside diners. It was affordable on one income. Today, airfare alone can swallow that much, and a full week's trip often costs double or more. A family doctor's visit in the 1980s might cost $25 or $30 without insurance. It was the kind of bill you could pay in cash and walk away from without fear. Insurance usually covered the basics, but even without it, seeing a doctor didn't feel like financial ruin. Health care was simpler, less tangled, and a lot less costly. A loaf of bread in the 80s cost about 50 cents, while a gallon of milk ran closer to $1.80. Families bought them weekly, without blinking. Compare that to today, when prices swing wildly, and a trip to the store can feel like highway robbery. Back then, basic staples stayed steady, part of a predictable family budget. Ground beef was under $2 a pound for most of the decade. Burgers, meatloaf, casseroles. It stretched far in a middle-class kitchen. Moms stocked freezers with packs of it, and a pound could feed the whole family with leftovers to spare. Today, you're lucky if you find it under $5, making even simple meals costlier. A dozen eggs ran about 90 cents in 1985. They were a breakfast staple and a cheap way to fill kids up before school. Omelets, egg salad, or just scrambled with toast. Eggs were reliable and affordable. Today, with prices sometimes spiking to $4 or $5, people shake their heads at how much cheaper food once was. At McDonald's in the 80s, a hamburger cost about 50 cents, fries another 35, and a Coke around 30. For a couple of bucks, you could feed yourself, and a family night out barely dented the wallet. Compare that to today, when the same meal runs $10 or more. Fast food was truly fast and cheap. Concert tickets for the biggest stars, Springsteen, Madonna, Prince, cost just $15 to $20 in the 1980s, or around $50 to $65 today. Shows were electric, tickets sold fast, but the prices were within reach for middle-class fans. Compare that to today, when the same seats can run hundreds, even thousands, for a single night of music. A movie ticket cost about $2.50 in 1980, closer to $4 by the end of the decade. Families could pile into theaters without feeling the pinch. Popcorn and soda added another couple of dollars, but it was still affordable entertainment. Today, with tickets hitting $15 to $20, people remember the 80s as the last era of cheap Hollywood fun. A pack of cigarettes cost under $1 at the start of the 1980s. They sat on convenience store counters, and plenty of folks smoked without thinking much about health warnings. By the end of the decade, prices nudged higher, but they were still cheap compared to today's $8 to $12 packs, not to mention all the taxes added on. A new VHS player in 1982 cost close to $1,000. It was a marvel, being able to watch a movie in your living room. By 1989, prices had dropped under $200, and suddenly every household had one. Renting movies became a weekly tradition. That steep price drop is part of why home video exploded so fast. Renting a movie at Blockbuster ran $2 to $3 a night. Families walked the aisles together, kids lobbying for cartoons while parents leaned toward thrillers. Friday nights meant picking a stack of tapes, grabbing some microwave popcorn, and calling it entertainment for the weekend. For a middle-class family, it was cheaper and cozier than going out to the theater. A Sony Walkman in the 1980s cost about $100. It was a prized gadget, letting kids and teenagers take their music anywhere. Cassettes tucked into pockets, headphones perched on heads. Saving up for one took weeks of allowance or part-time jobs, but once you had it, you felt like the world marched to your own soundtrack. Levi's jeans ran about $20 a pair, durable and dependable. They weren't fast fashion. They were meant to last, patched and worn until the knees blew out. Parents bought them for kids, knowing they'd survive schoolyards and chores. Compare that to now, when designer denim can cost hundreds and still won't hold up the way Levi's once did. In 1985, Nike Air Jordans debuted at $65 a pair. A shock back then. Kids begged their parents, and some saved allowances for months. It was the start of sneakers becoming status symbols, not just shoes. Today, $65 looks like a bargain when the same models re-release for $200 or more. Back then, it felt extravagant. By the mid-1980s, gas-guzzling station wagons gave way to minivans, which sold new for around $9,000. They became the symbol of suburban family life, sliding doors, 3 rows of seats, and room for vacations. Families packed in, drove across states, and made memories. For the price, it was the ultimate middle-class utility vehicle of its time. An IBM Personal Computer in 1981 retailed for about $1,565, nearly $5,000 in today's dollars. Apple's Macintosh in 1984 was even steeper at $2,495. Owning one wasn't common yet, but early adopters paid the price to type faster, crunch numbers, and get a taste of the digital future. Long-distance phone calls were expensive, sometimes 20 cents a minute or more. Families watched the clock when talking to relatives across states. Kids got quick say hello and goodbye reminders before parents took over. Sunday evenings were popular because rates dipped slightly. Today's unlimited calling makes people forget how carefully minutes once had to be rationed. Magazines like Time or Life sold for $1.50 to $2 an issue. Families stacked them on coffee tables, flipping through pages of news, stories, and glossy ads. Subscriptions were cheap enough that most middle-class homes had several. Today, many of those magazines are gone or digital, but in the 80s, they were part of the weekly rhythm of life. Airline tickets in the 80s were no bargain. A domestic round trip often ran $200 to $300, equal to around $700 to $1,000 today. Families thought twice before booking a flight, and many still piled into the station wagon instead. Flying was special, with people dressing up for it, not something you did casually like we do now. Fast food pizza chains like Pizza Hut and Domino's sold large pies for about $8, which is roughly $25 today. Families could grab dinner without blowing the budget, and delivery felt like a luxury. Those cardboard boxes with grease spots became part of Friday nights across America. Today, that same pizza costs double, and feeding a family takes more planning. A six-pack of beer averaged $3 to $4 in the 1980s, equal to around $10 to $13 today. It was the classic backyard barbecue staple, stacked in fridges and coolers. You didn't need a big budget to stock up for a gathering, and most brands tasted about the same anyway. Compared to today's craft brews, it all felt simpler. A cold 12-ounce Coca-Cola from a vending machine cost about 40 cents in the 1980s, equal to about $1.30 today. You'd feed a couple of coins into the slot, hear the clunk, and out came the glass bottle or can. It was an everyday treat, not something you thought twice about. Nothing like the $2 to $3 prices now. A new color television in the early 1980s ran $300 to $500, or around $1,000 to $1,600 today. It was a proud investment. The centerpiece of the living room, families showed them off, neighbors gathered to watch, and kids argued over channels. By the end of the decade, bigger screens and remote controls made the upgrade even more tempting. Microwave ovens finally became affordable by the mid-'80s, running around $200 to $300, equal to $650 to $1,000 today. Families couldn't believe how quickly dinner could be reheated. From popcorn bags to frozen meals, it felt like space-age convenience. By the end of the decade, nearly every household had one, though plenty of moms still preferred the oven. Furniture shopping at Sears or Levitt's in the 1980s could furnish an entire living room for under $1,000, equal to about $3,200 today. Sofas, recliners, coffee tables, all delivered and built to last. Families often paid on installment plans, proud to make their homes look modern. Compare that to today, when one couch alone can cost the same. A dental cleaning cost $25 to $30 in the 1980s, about $90 to $105 today. Even fillings rarely passed $50, and most insurance covered the basics. Families went in, paid cash, and left without worry. Today, a simple cleaning without coverage can run $150 to $200. Admission to Disneyland was just $11 in 1980 and about $25 by 1989, equal to $35 to $60 today. Families could visit the park without breaking the bank, enjoying a day of magic, rides, and fireworks. Today, single-day tickets run $130 to $160 per person, turning what was once an affordable outing into a major family expense. A night in a roadside motel during the 1980s often cost under $30, about $100 today. Families packed into rooms with 2 double beds, a color TV, and maybe a pool out back. It wasn't fancy, but it did the job. Compare that to now, when even budget motels can run $100 to $150 a night. A Polaroid instant camera sold for $50 to $70 in the 1980s, equal to about $160 to $225 today. Families loved them because you could hold a photo minutes after snapping it. The pictures weren't perfect, but that soft, faded look became part of the charm. Today, Polaroids have made a comeback, but mostly as nostalgic novelties. A used car in decent shape often cost $1,500 to $2,500 in the 1980s, or about $5,000 to $8,000 today. Teenagers could save up for their first set of wheels without crippling debt, and families picked up second cars cheaply. Compare that to now, when even worn-out used cars often cost $10,000 or more, and cheap isn't really cheap. A window air conditioner in the 1980s cost around $250, equal to about $800 today. For families without central air, that little box in the window made all the difference in summer heat. Folks crowded into the cooled room, dragging in sleeping bags if needed. Today, with soaring utility bills, even running those units feels expensive. The dollar went further in the 1980s. One steady paycheck could cover the mortgage, a car loan, groceries, college savings, and still leave enough for vacations. Families weren't rich, but the middle class felt solid. Today, with housing, health care, and education costs soaring, people look back at the 80s as a time when money actually stretched. In the 1980s, rent for a modest two-bedroom ran about $350 a month, equal to $1,200 today. Landlords often knew you by name, and paperwork fit on a single page. Compare that to now, when city rents soar past $2,000 or more, and even small-town apartments can feel out of reach. Back then, renting didn't swallow your whole paycheck. A 2x4 stud in the 1980s cost about $1.25, roughly $4.50 today. A bag of concrete was under $3, about $10 now. Families tackled weekend projects without hesitation, whether it was a new deck or a garage. Today, a lumber shortage or price spike can wreck budgets, making home improvement feel more like luxury than necessity. Employer-provided health insurance was the standard in the 1980s. An average family plan cost about $1,100 a year, around $4,000 today. A hospital stay was about $400 a day, equal to $1,400 now. Compare that to today, when family premiums top $22,000 a year, and hospital bills can destroy savings. Back then, healthcare costs felt manageable. A student apartment near campus in the 1980s might run $150 to $200 a month, about $500 to $700 today. Split with roommates, it meant living on part-time wages was still possible. Students could focus on classes without drowning in rent. Now, college housing often tops $1,500 per month per person, making it one of the heaviest student expenses. A brand new refrigerator in the mid-1980s cost about $600 to $800, equal to $1,800 to $2,400 today. Families expected them to last 15 to 20 years, and many did. Compare that to today, when modern fridges can run $2,000 to $3,500 and often need repairs or replacement after a decade. Back then, appliances were built for the long haul. A middle-class family in the 1980s paid about $60 to $70 a month for electricity, equal to $200 to $240 today. Heating oil or natural gas added another $50 or so. Bills stayed predictable, part of a monthly budget. Today, families see winter bills top $400 or $500, making many nostalgic for those steady utility costs. Bowling was cheap fun in the 1980s. A game cost about $1.50 to $2 per person, with shoes another 50 cents. Families could spend a Friday night at the lanes for under $10 total. Today, one game runs $5 to $7 each, and a family night out easily tops $50. Back then, the lanes felt welcoming to everyone. A postage stamp was 15 cents in 1980 and 25 cents by 1989, about 40 to 55 cents today. Every household kept a roll in a drawer for bills and letters. The daily walk to the mailbox was part of the rhythm of life. Now, with stamps at 68 cents and rising, far fewer people even send mail. Daycare in the 1980s averaged about $250 a month per child, equal to $850 today. Many mothers still stayed home, but for working parents, it was manageable. Compare that to now with daycare often $1,500 to $2,000 per child each month. Back then, child care fit into the middle-class budget. Today, it's one of the biggest burdens parents face. Blockbuster Video opened in 1985, and by the end of the decade, it had over 1,000 stores. Friday nights meant browsing the shelves, hoping your movie wasn't already rented. You picked a VHS, grabbed some Milk Duds, and if you were lucky, nobody had rewound it. Vacation? You packed the car and headed to Florida, Disney, Daytona, or just a cheap motel with a pool. That was living. You played road trip bingo, fought over the map, and ate gas station peanuts until someone barfed. And when you saw the palm trees, magic. Saturday mornings smelled like cereal and freedom. Cartoons ran from 7 to noon, and you didn't dare miss a second. You sat cross-legged in front of the TV with a bowl of Cap'n Crunch, hypnotized by Thundercats, G.I. Joe, and back-to-back toy commercials. That was your quiet time, and nobody messed with it. You recorded songs off the radio, finger on the pause button, waiting for the DJ to stop talking. If you nailed the timing, you felt like a genius. If not, you had Casey Kasem yelling over the intro to Take On Me for the 100th time. In 1983, McDonald's introduced the Chicken McNugget nationwide, and America never looked back. Dipped in BBQ or honey mustard, they were crispy, addictive, and perfectly bite-sized. Kids begged for them. Adults stole one out of the box just to check the temperature. One taste and you were hooked. Arcades were the heart of every mall. Quarters in your pocket, joystick in hand, Pac-Man on the screen. It was pure magic. The place buzzed with synth music and button mashing. High scores meant respect. And if someone beat your record, you didn't cry. You stayed until you took it back. A typical house cost around $80,000, and it gave you space to breathe. 3 bedrooms, real wood cabinets, shag carpet in at least one room, and a backyard big enough for a grill and a slip and slide. You didn't dream of luxury. You dreamed of privacy. And that second bathroom? Pure gold. The Sears Wish Book was Christmas in print. Hundreds of pages of toys, gadgets, and dreams. You circled everything with a red pen, folded the corners, and left it somewhere your parents would accidentally find it. Half the fun was flipping through it again and again. Gas finally dipped below $1 in 1986. Stations flipped their signs to 0.89, attendants still washed your windshield, and drivers cheered like they'd won the lottery. Every cruise felt twice as sweet. In the 80s, everyone had the family photo wall, awkward school pictures, glamour shots with soft lighting, and your uncle's perm proudly framed in wood. If you stood still too long in the living room, someone might hang a picture of you next. Kids drank out of their garden hose, no filters, no BPA warnings, just cold metal-tasting water straight from the backyard. You lined up with your friends after riding bikes, passed it around, and lived to tell the tale. The clapper turned lights into magic. Clap once, lights off. Clap twice, lights on. Every commercial ended with clap on, clap off, the clapper. It felt futuristic until it turned on in the middle of the night because your dog sneezed. Average salary in the 1980s? About $17,000. And it stretched farther than you'd think. You could feed a family, buy a used car, and still have a little left for the movies on Friday. Most folks lived simple, but you didn't need much when fun was $5 in a backyard. In 1981, MTV launched with the words, "Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll." It was like someone turned up the color on America. Music videos became just as important as the songs. And suddenly, bands didn't just have to sound cool. They had to look cool, too. Burgers came wrapped in foil, not boxes. Fast food was cheap, salty, and tasted amazing after baseball practice. Fries came in paper bags. Milkshakes were so thick they bent your straw, and you couldn't leave without a few ketchup packets in your pocket. In 1985, Coca-Cola changed its recipe and launched New Coke. People hated it. Protest lines formed, complaint letters piled up, and phone calls poured in. Just 3 months later, Coca-Cola caved and brought back the original formula, now branded Coke Classic. Few marketing failures were ever so beloved. In the 80s, you didn't text at school. You passed notes, folded like origami, labeled Read Now, and slid across desks like secret missions. If someone caught you, straight to the trash can, unless the teacher read it out loud. Then, goodbye, dignity. In 1985, the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES, hit U.S. shelves. Suddenly Mario wasn't just a plumber, he was a hero. Duck Hunt, Zelda, Punch-Out! Games came in gray plastic bricks you had to blow into to get working. And when they did work, hours vanished. Trapper Keepers were status symbols, loud colors, Velcro flap, matching folders. If yours had unicorns or race cars, you were basically royalty. You flipped it open in class like a briefcase full of secrets. And when that Velcro ripped open, heads turned. You recorded TV on blank VHS tapes, labeled them with marker, stacked them by the VCR, and if someone taped over your movie night, that was grounds for war. There were entire shelves filled with homemade TV archives. Some are probably still in basements, half-labeled and dusty. Car interiors smelled like warm vinyl and crayons. You sat on sticky bench seats, rolled the windows down by hand, and burned your legs on seatbelt buckles. No airbags, no cup holders, Just you, the road, and your dad saying, "We're not stopping till we get there." In 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster stopped the country in its tracks. Millions watched it live, including school kids, because teacher Krista McAuliffe was aboard. It was supposed to be inspiring. Instead, it was a heartbreak America never forgot. In 1981, IBM released its first personal computer, and it looked like a boxy little spaceship. Businesses loved it, schools experimented with it, and tech guys said it'd change everything. Turns out they were right. But it still couldn't beat Tetris on a Game Boy. In 1984, Apple aired its 1984 Super Bowl ad introducing the Macintosh. It only aired once, but made history. A woman in red hurls a hammer at Big Brother on screen, and boom, the PC world changed forever. It was bold, weird, and totally unforgettable. Popcorn ceilings were everywhere. Every house had those bumpy, weirdly satisfying ceilings that looked like they'd been frosted with drywall. You'd stare at them while lying on the floor, counting shapes or flicking a Nerf dart up to see if it'd stick. Most of the time, it did. You didn't stream your favorite shows. You waited all week. Thursday night was The Cosby Show. Cheers, Family Ties. Miss an episode? Tough luck. You hoped for a rerun or someone at school who could tell you what happened, but without spoilers, because they weren't called that yet. In 1982, E.T. phoned home and broke every box office record. You cried. Your parents cried. Even your big brother cried. Suddenly, Reese's Pieces were cooler than M&M's, and every kid wished they had a glowing finger and a BMX bike. Grocery trip? Around $60 fed a family of 4. Milk was about $2, bread under $1, and ground beef ran close to $1.30 a pound. You could still fill a cart without breaking the bank. Coupons helped, sure, but back then, food didn't feel like a luxury. It just fed you. In 1987, The Simpsons debuted as shorts on the Tracy Ullman Show. They weren't polished, just a weird, squiggly cartoon family. But even then, Bart had attitude, Homer was clueless, and nobody could have guessed they'd become the longest-running TV family in history. In 1986, Top Gun made sunglasses and fighter jets cool again. Tom Cruise, volleyball on the beach, and a soundtrack that got stuck in your head for years. Everyone suddenly wanted a bomber jacket, a motorcycle, and a wingman. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell, and even kids in the U.S. felt it. For years, they'd seen movies, drills, and speeches about the Russians. Suddenly, the Cold War seemed to crack open, and Reagan's challenge, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," didn't sound like a movie line anymore. The Ford Escort ruled the road. Small, boxy, reliable, and it came in colors like mustard yellow and seafoam green. Your mom drove it to the store. Your buddy crashed one into a ditch, and if you got one as your first car, you were set. In 1983, Microsoft Word launched for the first time. It wasn't flashy, but it let you type, save, and edit without whiteout. Typing a paper without redoing the whole page felt like a witchcraft. And if you had a printer, you were basically a tech wizard. Before GPS, if you went on a road trip in the 80s, You used a fold-out map the size of your windshield. You fought with your spouse over which exit to take, and the glove box was full of old ones from past trips. If you made it there without getting lost, it was a miracle. In 1981, Raiders of the Lost Ark hit theaters, and Indiana Jones instantly became every kid's adventure hero. Hat, the whip, and a fear of snakes, it made archaeology cool for the first and maybe last time in history. In 1984, Tetris was invented in the Soviet Union, but it took off like wildfire in the U.S. when Nintendo bundled it with the Game Boy. The blocks fell faster, your heart raced, and you swore that music played in your sleep. Still does, honestly. You couldn't text your friends. In the 80s, you had a little black address book, a wall calendar, and maybe an answering machine that beeped like a microwave. If someone missed your call, they called back. That was social media, and somehow it worked just fine. Shopping malls were the teenage kingdom. You didn't go there to buy things. You went to be seen. Walkman on your belt, Orange Julius in hand, and a stop at Spencer's Gifts to laugh at the weird lava lamps and questionable T-shirts. It was freedom with air conditioning. You sent film to get developed and waited. 1 hour photo wasn't everywhere yet, so you dropped off a roll, waited days, and hoped they didn't all come out blurry. That envelope of glossy prints, pure treasure. Cash ruled the 80s. If you wanted something, you paid for it in paper, coins, or a handwritten check. You kept your money in a nylon Velcro wallet that made a ripping sound loud enough to silence a room. And somehow it made you feel rich. Every living room had a giant wood-paneled TV. It took 2 people to move it, weighed as much as a refrigerator, and had rabbit ears you wrapped in foil for better signal. Sometimes you had to bang the side to make the picture stop jumping. You wore your favorite band on your T-shirt. Concert tees weren't just clothes. They were identity. You ironed them flat, wore them thin, and never threw them out. AC/DC, Journey, Van Halen, whatever was on your chest, that was your crew. Microwaves changed everything. Suddenly, dinner didn't have to take an hour. You could zap a Salisbury steak, nuke a burrito, or reheat last night's coffee. No more waiting on the oven. Just push a few buttons and wait for the ding. Reagan was everywhere. Whether you loved him or not, Ronald Reagan's voice, hair, and optimism filled the 80s. He called the Soviet Union the evil empire, promised morning in America, and somehow made jelly beans seem presidential. His speeches were pure Hollywood, and so was his delivery. Cabbage Patch Kids caused riots. In 1983, parents fought in store aisles to grab the last doll. Each one had a unique name, chubby face, and a fake birth certificate. It wasn't just a toy. It was proof that you cared enough to elbow strangers for your kid. School lunch in the 80s meant rectangular pizza, lukewarm milk in a cardboard carton, and maybe a fruit cup with a half peach floating in syrup. You ate it on a plastic tray under fluorescent lights, and somehow it was still the best part of the day. Every neighborhood had at least one kid whose mom made Kool-Aid in an old Tupperware pitcher. You dumped in the sugar by feel, not by measurement. One sip, and your whole mouth turned purple. The walls were sticky. nobody cared. It was summer in a cup. Gas station maps were free. You walked in, grabbed one from the rack, and asked the clerk which road had the least traffic. No GPS, no apps, just a creased-up paper guide and some local advice. And if you took the wrong turn, that's how adventures happened. Roller rinks were packed. Disco lights, fog machines, and endless loops around the rink to Madonna or Foreigner. If you held someone's hand during the slow song, it basically meant you were dating. Bonus points if you didn't fall in front of them. Boom boxes were the soundtrack of the street. Big, loud, and slung over your shoulder, they blasted Run DMC, Madonna, or Springsteen on cassette. If your batteries died mid-song, you either swapped them out or held a funeral for your street cred. In 1982, Time magazine's Man of the Year wasn't a man at all. It was the computer. That's how big tech had become. Personal computers were showing up in homes and classrooms, and no one could quite figure out what to do with them yet. Velcro shoes changed everything for kids. No more bunny ears, loops, or double knots. Just strap-and-go freedom. They made you feel fast, even if you still tripped over your own feet. Laserdisc looked like the future. It was huge, shiny, and promised better quality than VHS. Problem was, it cost too much and barely fit on your shelf. Most folks stuck with tapes, but if your friend had Laserdisc, you knew their dad worked in tech. In 1980, Post-it notes hit the market. Bright yellow squares you could slap on anything. Suddenly, fridges were covered in reminders, desks were buried in notes, and parents had a new way to say, "Clean your room," without raising their voice. TV commercials were part of the experience. Jingles stuck in your head, mascots became celebrities, and Saturday morning cartoons came with cereal ads that made you beg your parents. There was no skipping. If you wanted to fast forward, you better have recorded it on a VCR. In the 80s, airline tickets came with real perks. You got a hot meal on a tray, leg room that didn't require yoga, and maybe even a free deck of cards. Kids got wings from the pilot. Nobody paid for luggage. Flying felt like an event, not a chore. Home perms were everywhere. Girls, moms, even some dads ended up with big, fluffy curls that smelled like chemicals for a week. If you had bangs, they were teased straight up with Aquanet until they could block radio signals. Style was loud and proud. Jelly shoes hit playgrounds like neon raindrops. Translucent plastic, glitter inside, and a smell you can still remember. They squeaked, they pinched, and after a day in the sun they nearly melted. But if your feet sparkled purple, you felt like the coolest kid at recess. In 1980, CNN became the first 24-hour news network. Suddenly, news didn't stop after 6 p.m. You could flip it on at any time and get updates from around the world. For better or worse, it changed how Americans consumed information and how often they worried. Every kitchen had Tupperware, bright orange, avocado green, mustard yellow, lids that never matched and somehow never fit quite right. Your mom went to Tupperware parties and brought home gadgets you never used, but you still had to find a drawer for. The Pepsi challenge actually started in 1975, but the taste test tables were still everywhere in the 80s, malls, fairs, even grocery lobbies. You sipped 2 unmarked cups, picked Pepsi, and got a button that said, "I took the challenge." It was marketing judo, and most folks loved the free cola. Your calculator was a brick. It had rubbery buttons, cost a fortune, and if it had solar power, you felt like a genius. Teachers let you bring it to math class, but only if you promised not to type 58008 and turn it upside down. Socks went over your pants, especially if you were heading to aerobics class. Neon leg warmers, sweatbands, leotards. Thanks to Jane Fonda, exercise became a fashion show. You didn't just work out, you looked like you were about to perform on stage at a synth-pop concert. Choose your own adventure books turned reading into risk. 1 page, you're a detective. 5 pages later, you've been eaten by space squids. You kept a finger marking the previous choice. Cheating, technically, but the multiverse needed you alive. Trivial Pursuit took over every living room. Released in 1981, it was the board game that made you feel smart, until the arts and literature category humbled you. Families played for hours, arguing over answers, bending the rules, and claiming someone read that card before. Answering machines talked for you. A tiny cassette recorded your missed calls, usually with a robotic voice or your dad saying, "Leave a message after the beep." Some people even made custom jingles. You called home just to hear your own voice. In 1980, Rubik's Cube arrived in the U.S. 6 colors, endless frustration. You'd twist and twist until you gave up, peeled the stickers off, or claimed you almost had it. Solving one without cheating made you a legend in the school hallway. Everyone used payphones. A quarter got you a local call, and every gas station or street corner had a scratched-up metal box with a dangling cord. If you forgot the number, you just hoped they answered, or you stood there flipping through the phone book chained to the booth. You didn't play video games. You rented them, 1 cartridge at a time, from the corner store or Blockbuster. No saves, no tutorials. You had 48 hours to beat the game or cry trying. And if someone else rented it first, you waited, like it or not. That Swatch watch didn't just tell time. It told the world who you were. Neon colors, jelly straps, maybe 2 stacked at once if you were feeling bold. You wore it to the mall, to the arcade, to church, and somehow it always smelled like plastic and strawberry lip gloss. Crimped hair was everywhere. Girls plugged in heated irons that made zigzag patterns and burned fingertips. If your hair looked like it was folded like a fan, you nailed it. Add a scrunchie, side ponytail, and glitter lip gloss. Boom! 1980s fashion icon. Class photos were a whole event. You wore your best sweater, combed your bangs just right, and stood on bleachers while a photographer yelled, "Say cheese!" Half the class blinked, someone made bunny ears, and nobody ever looked at the camera at the same time. Pencils had erasers shaped like ice cream or footballs. They didn't erase well, but they smelled like bubble gum and made your pencil case feel exciting. Trading erasers during recess felt more important than anything happening in class. Movie theaters had sticky floors and buttery popcorn. You bought your ticket at a glass booth, picked a seat with no cup holder, and maybe snuck in candy from home. If someone tall sat in front of you, too bad. You leaned sideways the whole film. Polaroid pictures weren't perfect, but they were yours. Click, whir. Then you flapped that little square like you were casting a spell. A blurry face would fade in, crooked smile and all. No filters, no second takes, just one shot. And a memory that stuck to the fridge for years. You didn't Google song lyrics, you guessed them. Saying, "Hold me closer, Tony Danza," until someone corrected you. Even then, you weren't sure. Radio DJs never repeated them, and the cassette liner notes were folded like origami. Yard sales were social events. Your parents laid stuff on blankets, haggled over toasters and old lamps, and drank coffee from foam cups. You sold lemonade in Dixie cups and hoped someone would buy your old toys for a dime. In 1984, Ghostbusters took over pop culture. Everyone quoted the movie, drew the logo on notebooks, and wanted their own proton pack. If your parents got you the plastic one with the foam blaster, you were the kid on the block. You learned to type on a beige keyboard with no internet. Programs like Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing taught you where the letters were, one painful finger at a time. When you finally hit 30 words per minute, felt like you could run a company. Your classroom smelled like pencil shaving, chalk dust, and peanut butter sandwiches. The teacher had a giant pull-down map and a globe that squeaked when it spun. And if you got to run the film strip, you were basically royalty. Every fridge had alphabet magnets. Kids used them to spell weird messages, adults used them to post grocery lists, and somehow at least 3 letters were always missing. Usually Q, Z, and the second E. The pencil sharpener was mounted to the wall. You'd crank it like a machine from the 1800s, turning your pencil into a tiny spear. It squealed loud enough to stop class, and half the time it just ate the pencil instead. Trick-or-treating meant pillowcases full of candy and plastic masks that made you sweat like a furnace. Your breath fogged up the eye holes, but you powered through, because that full-size Snickers wasn't gonna earn itself. In 1987, Full House hit the air. It had corny jokes, hugs at the end, and 3 grown men raising kids in a house that somehow kept getting bigger. Whether you liked it or not, you got it, dude. Became part of everyone's vocabulary. You didn't stream Christmas movies. You waited all year. Rudolph, Frosty, and Charlie Brown aired once. Miss it? Tough luck. You circled the date in the TV guide, popped popcorn, and watched it with everyone under the same blanket. You drank Tab, even if you didn't like it. The pink can, the weird aftertaste, the sense that you were drinking something futuristic or radioactive. It was diet soda for people who wanted to feel ahead of their time, or who were out of Diet Coke. Every kid had a plastic lunchbox with a matching thermos, Scooby-Doo, Transformers, strawberry shortcake. Your lunchbox said everything about you. If you forgot to screw the thermos lid on tight, your soup leaked, and your PB&J tasted like tomato by noon. You had to rewind your VHS tapes. If you returned one to the rental store without rewinding, they charged a fee and gave you a dirty look. Be kind, rewind wasn't just a slogan, it was a moral obligation. Stickers covered everything, your lunchbox, your binder, your closet mirror. Some were fuzzy, some were glittery, some said things like rad and totally awesome. If you peeled one off wrong and ruined it, devastating. That was basically vandalism. Mall food courts were a weekend destination. You had your tray of pizza or orange chicken, your friends, and a pile of napkins. After lunch, you hit the arcade or Spencer's Gifts. It wasn't just shopping. It was where life happened. Your school folder had Lisa Frank or the A-Team, neon dolphins, rainbow tigers, muscle cars, or tough guys with machine guns. There was no in-between. If your folder had a cool cover, you showed it off like a trophy. Back to the Future wasn't just a movie, it was a blueprint. You dreamed of hitting 88 miles per hour in a DeLorean, sipping futuristic Pepsi, and landing somewhere with hoverboards and flying cars. Time travel felt possible, as long as you had plutonium and a mall parking lot. You checked the newspaper for movie times. No apps, no Google, just a long list of theaters and showtimes in tiny print. You circled the one you wanted, called your friend from the kitchen phone, and hoped someone's mom could drive. You learned to whistle through a blade of grass. One sharp squeal between your thumbs, and suddenly every kid on the playground was trying it. It never worked on the first try, but when it did, you felt like a wizard of sound. The biggest celebrity endorsement was for sneakers. In 1984, Nike signed Michael Jordan, and the Air Jordan era began. By the end of the decade, shoes weren't just shoes, they were status. And if yours were scuffed, you were devastated. You memorized phone numbers, friends, grandparents, pizza delivery. They all lived in your head. If you forgot one, you checked the Rolodex or the back of your address book. Losing that list was like losing your social life. The weather report was a guy with a pointer stick. Green screens weren't fancy yet, and your local weatherman looked like someone's uncle. If he said chance of rain, that meant pack an umbrella and sunscreen, just in case. America got a workout. Right in the living room, you popped in a Jane Fonda VHS, wore a spandex tighter than your future, and bounced along to synth music on shag carpet. No gym, no excuses. Just sweatbands, pastel leotards, and a war on calories that smelled like Aquanet. Sunday nights meant the Disney Sunday movie. You bathed, donned pajamas, and plopped in front of ABC as Tinkerbell lit up the castle. 1 hour of wholesome adventure, Flight of the Navigator, Old Yeller reruns, then straight to bed. School clothes laid out, dreams still sparkling with pixie dust. People met through friends, school, or church. No apps, just nerves, guts, and maybe a mixtape. First date? Usually the mall. Maybe a movie? Definitely food court pizza. You didn't split the bill, you saved up for it, and if the night ended with a kiss, you were walking on air. If you want to see 100 forgotten things from the 1950s, just click the video on your screen. Thanks for watching.